The year is 1809. Napoleon Bonaparte stands at the pinnacle of European power, master of an empire stretching from Spain to Poland. Yet beneath the glittering surface of French dominance, cracks are beginning to show. What happens when an unstoppable force meets immovable resistance? What happens when the greatest military mind of the age begins to make his first fatal mistakes? This is the story of Napoleon's downfall, a descent that would take 5 brutal years and reshape the entire continent. Stay with me, because what you're about to discover will change everything you thought you knew about one of history's most legendary figures. Welcome back to the channel, and if you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because we dive deep into history's most fascinating moments. Today, we're exploring one of the most dramatic falls from grace the world has ever witnessed. Napoleon Bonaparte's journey from seemingly invincible emperor to defeated exile didn't happen overnight. It was a slow-motion catastrophe that began in 1809 and culminated in his final defeat in 1814. This is a story of hubris, miscalculation, and the limits of military genius. So grab your favorite beverage, get comfortable, and let's journey back to the early 19th century. By 1809, Napoleon had already accomplished what seemed impossible. He had shattered the old European order, humiliated Austria and Prussia, forced Russia into an uneasy alliance, and made his brothers kings across the continent. The map of Europe had been redrawn according to his vision. The Grande Armée was the most formidable fighting force on the planet, and French culture, law, and administration were spreading across conquered territories like never before. Napoleon himself was at the height of his intellectual and physical powers, a man who could dictate detailed orders to multiple army corps while simultaneously reforming the legal code and planning urban improvements for Paris. But 1809 would mark a turning point. Austria, humiliated by previous defeats and watching Napoleon's armies bogged down in Spain, decided to strike. The War of the Fifth Coalition erupted in April when Austrian forces invaded Bavaria, one of Napoleon's German allies. This war would reveal something crucial about Napoleon's empire. It wasn't as solid as it appeared. The Austrian leadership, particularly Archduke Charles, had studied Napoleon's tactics obsessively. They had reformed their army, adopted some of his innovations, and learned from their mistakes. More importantly, they were fighting with a nationalist fervor that Napoleon hadn't encountered before. This wasn't just another dynastic squabble between royal houses. The Austrians were fighting for their survival as a great power. Napoleon rushed from Spain to take personal command in Germany. What followed was the Danube Campaign, a series of battles that showcased both Napoleon's continued brilliance and the first signs of his vulnerability. At Eckenhall and Abensberg, he outmaneuvered the Austrians with his characteristic speed and precision. But then came Aspern-Essling in May 1809, and everything changed. For the first time in his career, Napoleon suffered a clear, undeniable defeat on the battlefield. Attempting to cross the Danube River near Vienna, French forces became trapped on the island of Lobau when the Austrians destroyed the bridges behind them. Archduke Charles attacked with overwhelming force. The battle raged for 2 days, and when it ended, Napoleon had lost over 20,000 men and was forced to retreat. Among the dead was Marshal Jean Lannes, one of Napoleon's closest friends and most talented commanders. The psychological impact of Aspern-Essling cannot be overstated. Napoleon had been beaten. The aura of invincibility that had surrounded him since his Italian campaigns of the 1790s was shattered. Across Europe, resistance movements took notice. If Austria could defeat Napoleon, perhaps others could too. Napoleon would win a massive victory at Wagram 6 weeks later, forcing Austria to sue for peace once again. But Wagram was a grinding, costly battle that lacked the elegance of his earlier masterpieces, like Austerlitz. He was winning, but the victories were becoming Pyrrhic. The Treaty of Est-en-Brun in October 1809 seemed to restore Napoleon's position. Austria lost more territory, paid a massive indemnity, and was forced to join the continental system, Napoleon's economic blockade against Britain. But beneath the surface, the cracks were widening. The Spanish ulcer, as Napoleon himself called it, was draining French resources at an alarming rate. What had begun as a quick intervention to place his brother Joseph on the Spanish throne had become a nightmare guerrilla war. Spanish partisans, supported by British forces under Sir Arthur Wellesley, the future Duke of Wellington, were tying down hundreds of thousands of French troops. The very word guerrilla comes from this conflict, literally meaning little war in Spanish. The Spanish situation revealed a fundamental problem with Napoleon's empire. It was built on military conquest and sustained by military occupation, but it lacked genuine popular support outside of France. Napoleon had brought real benefits to some conquered territories. The Napoleonic Code provided modern legal frameworks, feudal privileges were abolished, religious tolerance was expanded, and infrastructure improvements were made. But these reforms came at the point of a bayonet, accompanied by heavy taxation, conscription, and the subordination of local interests to French imperial ambitions. The Spanish people didn't want enlightened French administration. They wanted to be left alone. Throughout 1810 and 1811, Napoleon appeared to be consolidating his power. He divorced Josephine, who had failed to produce an heir, and married Marie-Louise, daughter of the Austrian emperor. This marriage to a Habsburg princess represented Napoleon's desire for dynastic legitimacy, his attempt to transform himself from a revolutionary upstart into a traditional European monarch. When Marie-Louise gave birth to a son in 1811, Napoleon seemed to have secured his dynasty. He titled the boy the King of Rome, a grandiose gesture that connected his empire to both ancient Rome and the Holy Roman Empire he had dissolved. But the empire's economic foundations were crumbling. The continental system, designed to strangle British trade and force Britain to make peace, was backfiring spectacularly. European economies, including France itself, depended on British manufactured goods and colonial products that came through British shipping networks. Smuggling became rampant. Even Napoleon's own brothers, installed as puppet kings, were ignoring the blockade when it suited them. The system was creating economic hardship across the continent without seriously damaging Britain, whose navy controlled the seas and whose merchants found alternative markets around the world. Russia was particularly frustrated with the continental system. Russian grain and timber exports depended on British buyers, and the Russian nobility's luxury consumption relied on British goods. Tsar Alexander, I had never been comfortable with the alliance forced upon him after the catastrophic defeat at Friedland in 1807. By 18, Russia was openly violating the continental system. Relations between the two emperors deteriorated rapidly. Napoleon demanded compliance. Alexander refused. Both sides began preparing for war. This was Napoleon's fatal mistake, the decision that would ultimately destroy him. Instead of accepting Russia's partial defection from his economic system and focusing on consolidating what he already controlled, Napoleon decided to launch the largest military operation Europe had ever seen. He would invade Russia, defeat Alexander's armies, and impose his will on the last major continental power outside his direct control. It was hubris on a staggering scale. The preparation for the Russian campaign consumed 1,811 and early 1,812. Napoleon assembled an army of over 600,000 men, the largest force he had ever commanded. But this grande army was not the instrument that had won Austerlitz. Less than half were actually French. The rest were drawn from conquered territories and reluctant allies, men who had little personal loyalty to Napoleon and varied tremendously in training and motivation. Polish troops might fight enthusiastically against their Russian oppressors, but Prussians and Austrians, forced to contribute contingents, could hardly be expected to die willingly for French imperial ambitions. On June 24, he expected a quick campaign, a decisive battle or two, and Russian capitulation. He would be catastrophically wrong. The Russians, commanded by Mikhail Kutuzov, refused to fight on Napoleon's terms. They retreated, trading space for time, scorching the earth as they went. The Grande Arme, he advanced deeper and deeper into Russia, its supply lines stretching impossibly thin. Soldiers began to starve. Horses died by the thousands. Desertion rates climbed. Napoleon finally got his battle at Borodino in September 1812, just 70 miles from Moscow. It was one of the bloodiest single days of the Napoleonic Wars, with combined casualties exceeding 70,000 men. Napoleon won a tactical victory, forcing the Russians to retreat once again, but it was a hollow triumph. The Russian army remained intact and capable of fighting. Napoleon had lost men and materiel he could not replace, thousands of miles from home in hostile territory. On September 14, Napoleon entered Moscow, expecting the Russians to surrender. Instead, he found the city largely abandoned and soon engulfed in flames. Whether the fires were started deliberately by retreating Russians or accidentally by looters and deserters is still debated, but the result was the same. Moscow, the great prize, was a burned-out shell that could not feed or shelter the Grande Arme through a Russian winter. Napoleon waited in Moscow for over a month. The Tsar remained silent. By mid-October, with winter approaching and supplies exhausted, Napoleon had no choice but to retreat. The retreat from Moscow is one of history's great disasters. The Grande Arme, already weakened by months of campaigning, was caught by an early and brutal winter. Temperatures plunged to levels the soldiers, many from southern European climates, had never experienced. Russian forces, joined by Cossack irregulars and partisan bands, harassed the retreating columns constantly. At the Berezina River crossing in late November, the army nearly disintegrated completely. Of the 600,000 men who had crossed into Russia in June, fewer than 100,000 would make it back. The rest were dead, captured, or had deserted. That's where we'll pause this part of our story. Napoleon has just suffered the greatest military disaster of his career, losing an army of 600,000 men in the frozen wastes of Russia. But his story is far from over. In part 2, we'll see how Napoleon attempts the impossible, raising a new army from scratch and fighting against all of Europe in a desperate struggle for survival. Make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on so you don't miss the epic conclusion to this story. What do you think about Napoleon's decision to invade Russia? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, keep exploring history.